Welcome to episode 44 of the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. I'm your co-host Isaiah Bollinger, and this is our first in-person podcast. We didn't really have like a studio set up, so we've got our background. That's our first Think 5000, and that is our original logo. We were actually called Move Digital with a U before Trellis.
Not confusing at all.
Yeah, not confusing at all. There's a reason we rebranded to Trellis. I know a lot about branding now. I'm a branding expert. So Trellis is not the original name. That is the original name. So we felt like it was a good background because that's where we started. And then, now that we should be in our third year. That's the first year Inc. 5000. We should be in our third year Inc. 5000. But yeah, Tim, how do you?
well, thanks to all of our dedicated listeners and dedicated viewers. It really is kind of funny to be in person. Isaiah and I have known each other for quite a while now, but we have never recorded a podcast together in the same room until today.
We started in coronavirus, so.
Right.
It wasn't probably the right thing for us to do.
It was a crazy leap, but here we are at episode 44.
Fully vaccinated
and ready to go, take on the world. So let me give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Punch Out to Go. They're a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce business platforms with e-procurement and ERP applications. And Punch Out to Go's iPaaS technology seamlessly links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing data. And with their solution, you can immediately reduce integration complexities for punch-out catalogs, electronic purchase orders, invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents in order to accelerate your business results. And thank you to our sponsor, Punch Out to Go. And Isaiah, back to you to introduce our great guest for today.
Yeah, this is exciting. Nick, we brought you on the podcast for a very specific reason. And you go by Nick Amabile, right? Am I saying that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And you're the CEO of Das42. It sounds like, I think anyone that goes to your website, looks at you, it's pretty clear you guys focus on data and analytics.
Yep.
And you've pretty much been in e-commerce your whole career. So can you tell us, tell us about your career in e-commerce and then why you decided to kind of get into analytics?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Isaiah and Tim. It's great to be here, and really excited to kind of talk about data and analytics. But yeah, in terms of my personal background, I actually started out in economic consulting a long time ago, doing antitrust litigation. Very boring, but very interesting, and learned a lot about a lot of different things that you wouldn't otherwise get a chance to learn about. But I quickly moved into technology, which was my real passion. Worked for a number of startups in e-commerce, and most recently I was the head of BI at Jet.com, and prior to that I was in senior analytics roles at Etsy. And really over my career, 10 plus years in analytics, I feel like I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, and I was banging my head against the wall, and I faced a lot of the problems that we help our customers with today. So, I really felt that, these problems are kind of pervasive across different sizes of companies, different industries, and it's something that, I was really passionate about solving these problems, and felt that I had hopefully something to offer and could try to save folks learning these lessons the hard way. So
I'm going to just interject right away. I mean, I want to hear a little bit more about Etsy and Jet. They're so well known to so many people. I'm a big fan of Etsy. They just acquired Depop. And I know Mark Laurie actually. And I know folks at Jet. There's a lot of good folks over there. So just tell us a little bit about the experience in those two amazing businesses. What that was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate to get to work with some really smart and amazing people. And, I think especially at Etsy at the time, they were a little bit ahead of the curve in dealing with really large data sets. So, and working with some pretty early technologies like Hadoop and things like that, which, almost today seem like ancient. But, we got a lot of experience dealing with large data sets. And some of those data sets, for example, are clickstream type analytics, what people are clicking on the website, what types of campaigns are they coming from a marketing standpoint. But it was really interesting. And the problem that we had was that data was everywhere, but nobody really knew how to actually use it for business sort of value. And that was really the challenge that we had to face there, was taking all this like raw clickstream data, for example, marrying it with your customer data, marrying it with your product data, and marrying it with, at Etsy, a two-sided marketplace. So we had seller data, we had buyer data, of course. And so getting a really holistic picture of the business was very challenging. And, if you had asked a number of people like, hey, what were sales yesterday? You would have asked 10 people and got 10 different answers. And that's very frustrating for somebody working in business intelligence, right? And for even just some of the basic measures that
sales, just
yeah,
sales data.
yeah, because what ends up happening is, you have a slightly different definition of sales than maybe I do. Maybe one piece of sales includes tax, maybe another includes shipping, and maybe other is just the merchandise value. So the part of the problem is mostly an organizational challenge rather than a technical challenge. And that was something that, this is why I started a consulting business, because I believe it's really actually kind of a people problem rather than a technology
like
problem.
a process, kind of like a
That's
people
right.
operations process issue.
Yeah, that's right. And so, and that's kind of what we now, what I now know is called data governance, right? And so we do a lot of work now with data governance with our companies and with our customers. So
Gotcha. And do you guys get into with data governance? I know that's even these PIM platforms are starting to roll that out too, like Salsify, and are you seeing some of that too on the product data
No,
governance?
I mean it's very. I mean it's a range, right? Some companies have, like Jet, for example. That was a very big challenge for Jet because they pulled product data from all these different vendors, and they sort of had their own homegrown solution, which has its own pros and cons, of course. And Jet was a very, engineering driven, technical forward company in terms of a lot of the things that they did. Which was kind of their advantage from an operational perspective, was really kind of focusing in on the operations. But the data was, again, vast in terms of just the product catalog, and they would want to look at, competitor pricing. So they would need to pull pricing from other competitors and then sort of marry that up into their own internal product catalog, which was a very big challenge. But yeah, I think it's really, again, at the end of the day, a challenge of coming up with these different data sets that are very large. They're all in different formats. They're all in different places in data silos. How do you bring it together and actually do something with it that's useful to the business? And so in our sort of work that we work with our customers, we always start with that business goal in mind, and let's talk about how you make money, who are your customers, what is the process for selling, and then we'll work backwards from there to actually figure out, okay, here's exactly where the data is coming from, and here's how we put it all together.
Yeah.
So, earlier in my career, so like mid 2000s, I was head of a database, a co-op database that was pretty big. It got sold to Merkle, and we were dealing with just understanding where data was. That was a big issue for people back then. So it was like, retailers who had catalog businesses, who had call centers, who were starting their web businesses, on and on, right? So that was a big piece of it. Then later, I was head of business intelligence for a CPG player, Nature's Bounty, right? And the issue in let's say around 2010 was more about like, let's regularize the data. Let's put it in the right format. So we know where it is, but let's figure out a format. And now I think you just led to something that's really critical. It's understanding what to do with that data. Like, how are we using this to the benefit of the business?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, you touched on a couple good points there. I mean, so data cataloging is sort of a great sort of, let's say one aspect of data governance, just figuring out where my data lives, what it means. If I need to access like a conversion rate report, kind of an e-commerce business, you want to make sure that you're looking at the governed canonical conversion rate report that is, going to be the same across all these different systems. And so figuring that out is kind of what we look to data catalogs for. But to your point, these disparate data sets, and I think it's come a long way now. There's a lot of digital. Obviously, as companies are moving more to digital, the data is more accessible in some ways, but it also means that the volumes are much higher. And as you mentioned, right, the variety of data sets are much sort of more.
It's almost like there's too much information.
That's right. I think that's right. I think there is too much information, and I think people, again, what we find in my career, what I found is that you have the technology team, which really understands a lot of the technical aspects of data, and then you have the business team, which knows how to use the data. But unfortunately, one doesn't necessarily know about the other. So in other words, the business folks don't know all the details of the technical technical details about the data, and then the technical team doesn't always know sort of what the business wants to do with the data. So that's really again where we come in and we kind of bridge that gap, and something that I've
bring
been
the two
passionate
parties
about.
together and get more value out of that.
Yeah, that's right. Because sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. Well, what I kind of want to get into is for B2B, which is obviously, getting into e-commerce and B2B e-commerce. And you probably started to see this. I mean, when Jet sold to Walmart, I mean,
Yeah.
Walmart, they're mostly B2C, but I think they're getting into B2B e-commerce. Amazon, who's
Yeah.
obviously who they're going after, is actually probably one of the biggest or the biggest B2B e-commerce sellers because they have the whole B2B, the business
Yep.
portal. You can be a business customer. So how do you like for people that aren't Amazon, that aren't Walmart, like, these guys can hire, teams of people like you, and they can get the best data scientists in the world, roughly, right? But
Sure.
let's just say you're middle market guy, just trying to grow the business for B2B e-commerce. Like, how do you, like you said, there's so much information. Where do you even start? Do you kind of keep it simple for someone like that? Like, do you guys work with maybe more of a mid-market customer that doesn't have, the
Yeah.
money that Amazon
Mhm.
has?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And one thing that I do want to mention though is like the problems of the Amazons of the world are very similar to what the problems of the mid market and folks like even at Etsy and Jet that we face, and that's been an insight to me that's been one of the most sort of surprising things. I think when I started
Yeah,
out, I thought I would be working more with smaller startups and sort of smaller companies and working with those folks, but at the end of the day, especially in the world of data and analytics, spreadsheets still reign supreme, right? And so a lot of what we do is getting folks off of spreadsheets. That's sort of I make a joke about that. It's obviously a little bit more complex than that, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what it is. But to your point, Isaiah, I think what a lot of the way I think about B2B e-commerce is that a lot of things that work for B2C e-commerce actually still work from a data and analytics perspective. So,
for sure.
at the end of the day, if it's e-commerce, we have a website. We need some sort of tracking on the website, whether that's Google Analytics or other types of tools like that, to
Yep,
understand what our visitors and what our users are doing on the
sure,
website. I think where B2B starts to get a little bit more complex is kind of just the sales process. And,
for
and there
sure.
are different types of sales processes that you might have in a B2B company, including like quotes. You might need to talk to somebody before you
Yeah,
actually get,
not
an
just the
actual
add to
order.
cart buy process. It could be a bigger sales cycle. The end
Right.
result might be them buying on the website, but behind
That's
the
right.
scenes, a lot could be going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. And so I think again though, if you think about that, maybe as you're kind of adding things to I don't know, a quote or something, you might add some things to a cart, if you will, and then get that cart quoted or something, and you may need to talk to
yeah,
somebody before you actually buy. But that means that you need to marry now the website data with your quoting system, whether it's
there's
Salesforce or whatever else it is, to
actually
actually
more
figure
work,
out.
more
Yeah,
complex data,
Mhm.
data
that's right.
analytics. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. And so I think there's just ends up being more systems involved in a sort of a customer sale than there would be on a B2C side of the house. But you're really still looking at a lot of the same metrics and KPIs. You're still looking at sort of conversion rates, add to cart rates, or sort of whatever visit to quotes or visit to lead type metrics. And then of course you're looking at how much actually am I getting from those leads and how much does it cost me to acquire those leads. At the end of the day, that's kind of just the same
the
economics of
basic
almost any
math is
business.
still there. It's just a little bit
That's right.
more. Yeah, it's a little more work to figure out what's going on, kind
Yeah,
of.
that's right. And I think I was listening to one of your guys' earlier episodes, and you hit on a really good point, which is I think product catalogs for these companies are often very vast, and not only are they vast, but I think there's also customizations that happen, of course, if it's certain types of products. So in
Sure.
B2C, you might be selling, I don't know, a t-shirt, and you have, small, medium, large size t-shirts, or, red, blue, yellow t-shirts. In a B2B context, you might have much more complex customizations that you need to
Kits and
track.
bundles, and they sometimes have these like
That's right.
crazy
That's right.
or
Yeah.
these part systems that are all interconnected, and yeah,
Right. And so that becomes again more complex. And I think you hit on something a minute ago around the product information and the product catalog. Like we have to take all that data now, marry that with kind of the website traffic data. We need to marry that with the quote data to actually figure out, okay, what is actually my margin, my contribution profit on what I'm selling here, to actually figure out kind of just the simple math of customer acquisition versus lifetime value type of
and
math.
And you're doing this all in these modern systems. Like, what are the systems you're using? So.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so one of the biggest systems that we use and most often is Snowflake, and that's one that a lot of people have heard of, given the recent IPO.
We were joking because we have no idea.
We don't know anyone who works at Snowflake, and that's what's so funny. And like here we are, and we do this stuff all the time, and we don't know anyone who works. So tell us about Snowflake, please. I mean, because I would.
Yeah. So Snowflake is a really great cloud data warehouse, and there of course there are many other cloud data warehouses out there. But the idea behind Snowflake is it separates storage and compute, and I won't get too technical, but there's lots of really technical advantages that make Snowflake easy to use and low cost to maintain, and very scalable and powerful. And to be honest, we've implemented Snowflake at small startups like less than 100 people, all the way to very, very large enterprises.
How much are we talking? Let's say you're a small startup. Is this thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars? Like, what are we talking to?
Well, of course, it could really range, right? But we see deals in the $25,000 to $50,000 per year. So
that's the licensing cost of a Snowflake type product.
Yeah, that's right.
But then they also need your services most likely, or an extra.
That's right. So it's a pay as you go type of thing, and you can literally, you don't have to, for Snowflake, you don't have to sign a contract. You can just go in and pay as you go with a credit card. Like
really?
Cloud. Yeah, like most cloud providers, like you can sign up, for AWS, and AWS has Redshift, which is a competing product with Snowflake. But they all kind of accomplish the same thing, which is centralizing all this disparate data that you have maybe in your product catalog, your web clickstream data. You might have it in your sort of order and sort of quoting process, taking all that data and putting it in one place. That's really the first step to doing any sort of data and analytics project, is getting your data in one place, because that's the only way you're going to be able to kind of join it together and relate it together.
But just for people that maybe they want to do this, or they want to learn, or they're trying to get better at B2B e-commerce, what would you suggest? What is that data? So let's say let's just use the example. I like using a simple example. B2B e-commerce company, they probably have, say they have Magento or whatever, a site like Magento, right? It's a common B2B platform. They have probably an ERP system. Maybe they have a CRM. Like, what can you go through, like, what they would do? What would you do? Like, and I know it's a lot, and I'm just trying to like help people understand.
Walk us through it.
Yeah, right. Well, I think you kind of, but I think you were actually, the example is instructive, because essentially what you want to do is focus on one or two key use cases first. Like that's the first thing that we do with our customers, and we focus first on those business use cases. So say it's like, I don't know, marketing campaign ROI. In the e-commerce world, we're always trying to get new folks to our website. We're trying to do different marketing initiatives. Could be digital marketing or whatever. But let's just talk about that. We want to sort of figure out, we're launching a new AdWords campaign or whatever it is. We want to see how many folks are coming to our website and, of course, buying from us. That's kind of a use case that we might start with. And so in that case, we'll just say, okay, we want to look at, visits to the website. We want to look at conversion rate from those visits. We want to look at some campaign data to understand, how much do we pay for this campaign, or what's sort of the cost per click, and those type of things. So we'll kind of then map those different KPIs and metrics back to data sets. So we'll say, okay, we need AdWords data to understand kind of what campaigns we ran and how much we spent for them. We'll look at something like Google Analytics data to understand how many folks came from those campaigns to our website. And then we may look at our order or quoting system to understand, how many people purchase from those campaigns and what do they actually buy. And again, we're able to kind of do that by centralizing the data first, and then sort of relating it together to maybe join it on, some sort of identifier or ID or order ID.
Like an email, or like
it could be an email, it could be an order ID, and it depends. Some customers, they have to log in before they can buy something. Some can guest check out. So obviously it gets a little bit more complex and very specific to each individual business. But that's the general idea. And what we want to do is, get that data into one place first and sort of relate it together. But then obviously we got to get it back to the business in some form or fashion. It doesn't really mean that much if the data is just in Snowflake, because most people can't write SQL or other code that's required to go get that data out of Snowflake, right? So we have to put it in some sort of BI or reporting tool to make sure that folks who can't code, that could be salespeople or customer service people. They all need access to that data, right? So how do we get data to those
that
folks?
too, or do they give you the BI reporting tools on top of
Snowflake
it?
does, yeah. Snowflake does have a BI and reporting tool. It's pretty basic at this point. I think they're working on improving it, but it still requires you to learn programming. And so typically what we do is, we do something like a Tableau or a Looker or a ThoughtSpot, a modern kind of business intelligence tool that basically is kind of more of a drag and drop and kind of click type of interface. So, you could say, I want to look at campaigns and I want to look at orders by campaign, and then just click run, and there you go. And you can kind of slice and dice
So
from
an
there.
executive could do basic reporting and just, hey, how many people
That's right.
bought this product, 3 months ago or whatever. I don't know.
Yep, that's right. Yep, exactly. So that's really the key is kind of that data democratization aspect, getting data to everybody in the business who might need it, which these days is pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
So let me just ask a quick question here. So Das42 could get involved in any or all of these things, right? So you could strategize and just say, here's how you do it, and then walk away, or you could actually be there and say, here are our analysts who are analyzing everything that needs to get done on an ongoing basis. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, we offer consulting services, and so we can do like road mapping type of engagements and audit. Like we do a lot of sort of data platform architecture and auditing. So we go through and really understand those business requirements and use cases that we were just talking about to really understand a specific business process and that our customers might have. Of course, we can put together a roadmap for them and say, hey, here you go do it yourself or find someone else to do it. But that said, obviously, we're happy to do it ourselves. And we have a lot of experience working with large customers, implementing these type of, data and analytics platforms that really enable businesses to, get the value from data. And like we talked about, we also do data governance work to make sure that everyone understands what the data means. We also do training and enablement. Anytime you sort of release a new tool set to a business, there's some change management involved, and so we get involved in all those aspects.
Well, what do you think is the biggest data like for me, and I'll answer so that you can kind of understand where I'm going with this, is like typically the first thing I try and find out if I get Google Analytics. Usually Google Analytics is like the most easy way to hopefully have some idea of what's going on with a e-commerce business or that part of their business. And usually the most critical thing I look at is conversion rate, because that usually tells me a lot about where they're at as a business. What do you think the data points, the key metrics, and I know, like you said, it's very different depending on the business, but like a handful of key metrics that you think, particularly someone selling B2B supplies or whatever, it doesn't really matter what they're selling, but
I mean, I definitely do start with conversion rate as well myself, but I also look at the funnel, right? So in other words, starting from the top of funnel, like how many folks visited, how many folks viewed a product page, for example, how many people added to cart, how many people clicked checkout, and how many people actually converted.
You're kind of like looking at the conversion rate at a deeper level. Conversion rate itself is just like visits, how many people actually bought. But you're looking at like, what is it all the way through the funnel, basically?
Yeah, that's right. And then you can kind of start to see, okay, where are folks dropping off? Like, we have a ton of visits, but they're not actually getting to a product page, or maybe they start to search, but the product's out of stock, or there's no products that we carry related to that search. So there's different areas. But once you kind of see where the drop offs are in that sort of funnel, then you're able to kind of drill down a little bit deeper and kind of understand, maybe where that drop off is, or why that drop off's occurring.
Common drop off you've seen, or
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's typically more at the top of funnel. I mean, it again depends on kind of the business, but top of funnel is typically where we see the most drop off. I mean, once you've added to cart, that's a pretty good sign of intent to actually buy something. So that sort of as we get lower down the funnel, we have higher signals of intent. But at the top of funnel, there could be we start to, and that's where the marketing campaigns and other things like that start to come into play, because you're looking at which campaigns have higher conversion rate and maybe are giving us more qualified leads versus other campaigns. In the case of a B2B e-commerce, right? If there's a way to do more online without talking to somebody, again, that's just going to reduce friction. So again, for a B2B e-commerce company, it may be slightly different. If there's a very complex like quote process,
they shouldn't have a high bounce. If they have a high bounce rate, it's probably really bad sign for
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's right. And thinking about that, like for a B2B e-commerce, I would assume that it's more niche focused, right? And so the
yeah.
customers that are showing up to a website already kind of know what they're looking for perhaps, and already know, maybe you have a relationship with the customer. So at that point, we wouldn't expect as high of a drop off
Yeah, like when
for,
we go to Amazon Business, which we frankly buy a decent amount on Amazon Business, like we're probably going to buy something. Like
right.
we're not like, yeah, maybe we're shopping around, but generally it's like, okay, we need a new
Yep.
monitor. Usually that's where we get our monitors because it's easy, 2-day shipping. It's just,
Yeah, us too.
keyboard. There's certain accessories that they're kind of our go-to. So to that point, it's like if there's tons of homepage drop off as a B2B e-commerce user, like there's something wrong probably.
Right. And
So
probably in the case of B2B e-commerce, it's maybe somebody not finding what they want. So like if you go to Amazon, you look for a specific monitor, maybe it's out of stock or they don't
yeah,
have it. That might show something just in terms of like, where's the demand versus where's our product catalog at, and maybe we need to sort of fix some gaps or out of stock rates.
So if you're working on, like, the path, the consumer's going down whatever
Mm-hmm.
path they're taking, your analysts are giving specific recommendations, based on anything that you're seeing, based
Yep.
for the client. So it could be anywhere
interesting.
in the path, right? So you could
That's
be
right.
content related, or it could be functional,
Yep.
or it could be okay.
That's right. And I think what we try to do is also help companies maybe track data that they're not tracking today, right? So like Google Analytics is a really good example. Other types of web and clickstream tracking type platforms are a good example, where it's very customizable. There's a lot of stuff you can do in Google
Mm-hmm.
Analytics and other platforms, and if you don't have it implemented correctly, you may be missing some of the insights that you need. So that's also part of what we do, is help customers understand, okay, we're seeing a drop off here, but we need these other data points to really understand a little bit more about why that drop off is occurring. So we actually need XYZ data points to be implemented in Google Analytics for us to track this data and understand what's really going on.
And then are some of these things like user experience? Like, do you have the customer and like, hey, your guys' user experience sucks and you need to go? Like, what happens? What do you do then? Like,
And they use that word, actually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm sure you.
This
Yeah,
just sucks.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
fair.
Well,
I'm sure you say it nicer than that. But let's say you think, okay, it's just not a good user experience. What do they do then? They have to redesign the website, or how
yeah,
do
that's a good question. I mean, so first and foremost, like I'm not a UX expert, but and the other thing I'll say is, kind of everyone's opinion is just an opinion until it has data backed behind it, right? So,
yeah,
to your point, what we'll try to do is start to do maybe A/B testing or other things like that to really confirm and understand. Okay, we have a hypothesis. Let's test this hypothesis to see if whatever page A is better at converting than page B. Those type of things. Or we'll run different tests and just sort of understand, okay, we made a change. What was the impact of that change? I mean, Etsy was a place where I really learned a ton about the power and sort of just need for A/B testing, because if you say the UX sucks and I think it's great, you know what I mean?
yeah.
The only thing that's going to solve the argument.
You're doing very data-driven
That's
testing.
right.
Data-driven UX versus more visual, like we're just going to make it look better kind of thing.
Exactly,
A lot
because yeah,
subjective.
at the end of the day, we're trying to achieve some business goals, which is to increase conversion rate or sales or more customers, whatever it is. And sort of anything that's going to help us do that, from a more data driven standpoint, is positive. And I think the one thing I'll say is, at Etsy, we had very complex and advanced sort of A/B testing tools that a lot of which were built in house. But now more than ever, like a lot of these platforms are available sort of on a software as a service basis that can really help folks, like Google Analytics. I can't remember the name. I think it's I can't remember the name of the Google Analytics, but they do offer a sort of A/B testing platform. Optimizely is a sort of common one. Those type of things.
Yeah, I think
really do help.
Google has a free one. I think there's a ton of them out there.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so now I think it's sort of the
Really no
democratization.
excuse, right? There's really no excuse to not
Yeah.
consider it as an option. It's not so expensive. We're actually running an A/B test on our homepage first time.
Nice.
We haven't been very, we've been more subjectively improving our website, and
Yep.
finally we're like, let's play around with some A/B tests. It's a little bit harder, I think, for lead generation because the volume, B2B,
Yeah.
it's not like we're getting 1,000 leads a
Yeah.
day. So I think that's
Yeah.
actually much easier for e-commerce because they have more volume and more traffic usually than a B2B lead gen site. It's a little bit harder, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's right. And I would say that, these are sort of, next level maturity type concepts. Like
Yeah.
not everyone's going to start off with A/B testing, right? I think the real first step is centralizing your data and just
Yeah.
understanding what it looks like before you start getting into some of these concepts. But I think they are absolutely powerful, and certainly the on the B2C side of e-commerce, most of our customers are doing things like A/B testing. Whether it's at the AdWords level, they're running different types of ad campaigns, A/B testing, subject lines and things like that in emails, all the way through to A/B testing UI UX on their website. So that's something that I think I'd love to see some more of that in B2B e-commerce
Yeah. So
and
would you agree? I mean, that's part of why we did this podcast. We feel like B2B e-commerce is quite a bit behind B2C. And I think part of that is culturally,
yeah,
bigger orders are going to call people, are going to talk to people.
sure,
It's partly culture, but I think also it's just complex, right?
Yeah.
Like it's harder. You can't just throw up a shop. I mean, I think
yeah,
Shopify really changed the game for B2C because like anyone can get a Shopify website. It's like, it's not, it doesn't, to get up and running with e-commerce and B2C, it's not that expensive anymore compared to what it used to be.
yeah.
But B2B, I feel like B2B, that's not, it's still reasonably hard depending on, you need the cart to quote. But you already mentioned
Yep.
some of the features and you add in like integrations.
That's right, and I think just again some of the complexities of B2B, like I don't know, purchase orders and other things like that. Accepting credit, setting up accounts and things like that are different for B2B than in B2C. So being able to understand like what touch points do I need in my buy flow, but there's easy things to implement, like for example, one of the things that we're trying to do that is just, we're a B2B company, right? It's not B2B e-commerce, but B2B nonetheless, is to have more of like a drip email campaign when somebody signs up for a newsletter, making sure that we're having the right touch points with the customer over a longer period of time. Because for us, the sales cycle is much longer, right? The sales cycle isn't add to cart, click buy, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden we show up at your doorstep, right? It's like a 6 month plus sales cycle. So we want to make sure that we have the right touch points with the customer through that sales cycle. And again, there are lots of B2C sort of ideas and methodologies that we can use around email campaigns that we can bring to bear in our B2B business. So I think there's a lot of things like that that we can leverage.
So let me ask a question, because Isaiah brought this up about B2C and social media. So let's talk
Yeah.
about social media data for B2B, and
Yep.
really how that's how you look at that, how you help people figure it out. It's to me it used to be quite complex in B2C, and now B2B, I'm not sure where people are going with it, other than LinkedIn or some YouTube
Yeah.
videos or what have you.
Yeah, I mean
But
those are definitely really good places to start. I mean, they're sort of obvious, and for us, for example, again, just using us as an example, we have case studies and white papers and things like that we use on paid promotion via LinkedIn. I think it starts from understanding what your ideal customer profile looks like and where are they. And I mean, of course, these days everyone's on social media, of course, right? Maybe not always in their sort of work capacity, but at the same time, I think folks are open to seeing some work related items on social media. Of course, probably a lot of their friends on Facebook could be coworkers and other folks like that. So I think there has been a blend into just more kind of consumer behavior pervasive in the B2C world, also coming over to the B2B world. But again, I think it's about building relationships with customers over the long term and finding them where they're at. From a data perspective and an analytics perspective, I mean, it's actually quite straightforward these days, because the amount of data that you can get from a LinkedIn or a Facebook or a YouTube, especially in terms of digital ad spend and campaigns that you might run, those are really easy to grab and take that data out and marry it with the rest of your data sets, and including some of the Google Analytics stuff. So when we're talking about campaign data, that could be from a LinkedIn campaign. How many people showed up from this paid promotion that we did on LinkedIn, for example, and how many people maybe downloaded a white paper or downloaded a price sheet or something like that from our website.
Yeah, and I like how you're saying it's much more targeted with all the data out there because, it's kind of funny in B2B because you still see, I don't know how often you guys see this, but every once in a while I'll see a TV commercial. I know it's even funny to think about TV commercials nowadays, like
Yeah,
on live TV if you're watching sports or something. And
sure.
like IBM will still run a commercial, right?
Yeah,
Like IBM, it's like IBM, blah, blah, blah. And it's like so vague. And it's like, well, what the hell does IBM do, right? They're a B2B
yeah,
business.
Yeah,
Most people will never buy from IBM in their life. Like at this stage, they're not selling laptops anymore. They're selling big CIO level, right?
yeah,
Mostly like,
yeah.
but they're
And
advertising on
services, yeah.
TV. But to your point, but TV is consumer driven, right? But like
yeah.
that's their attempt to hit the consumer masses. Like, why not take that, get targeted on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter? Like people are there. I mean, business people are on Twitter. We're on Twitter,
Yeah, we're
like
everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like I'm a big golf fan, so I watch a lot of PGA Tour golf, and it's like Workday, Accenture, like big consulting
yeah,
firms, and other like you're saying
they're just
B2B
hoping
companies.
you're the guy watching. It's like,
But you know what? But I think that kind of talks maybe to the point that I was talking a minute ago, which is like just building that relationship with customers and getting in front of customers where they are at. I mean, yeah, to your point, I think TV is a little bit less targeted, of course, than something like a Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, if you're selling to CIOs, for example, we can
target every
target,
CIO.
yeah, you could, yeah, exactly. Or like if you're targeting CIOs in a specific industry, right? You can target those folks on those platforms. And so, I think those are certainly great places to talk about. But I think you also need to, think about what it is that you're sort of marketing on those platforms and making it relevant to sort of the context that you're in. I mean, if you're advertising on maybe certain YouTube channels that are focused on, I don't know, business to business, maybe it's business to business e-commerce, right? If you're going to advertise on that YouTube channel or podcast, perhaps you want to make sure that you're saying something that's relevant to that
So
sort of
are you
content.
saying that IBM should advertise on our YouTube channel for our podcast? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
I'm totally for IBM if you're listening. Give
We'll
me
take a
call.
$5 million deal right now. We'll
Give,
take
yeah,
give
right,
me a call.
exactly. I'll get a commission,
we'll
right?
take a few million bucks. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think these B2B e-commerce companies should be doing? Like these average companies, like you said, split testing might be. Is that probably too far advanced for some of these guys? Like you like start with the basics, figure out your data. You know,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, of course, like there's a lot that needs to go into setting up an e-commerce website, as you're kind of saying. I mean, Shopify is great on the consumer side, but with the product catalogs that B2B folks have and other things, making sure you have that strategy in place. Again, I think it just starts from a business strategy standpoint to say, this is important for us, and here are the pieces that we want to make sure can happen online or without talking to somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll never talk to somebody as you go through, a big purchase order or whatever it is. But understanding like, hey, here's our strategy, and then engaging somebody who is really data focused and data forward. It doesn't have to be us, but I
yeah,
think there needs to be some sort of a data stakeholder at the table to say if we're going into e-commerce or starting to dip our toes into digital in some way, we really need to think about how we're going to measure success, how we're going to track these sort of
yeah,
things, and I think especially given the level of investment that these kind of things and initiatives
yeah.
take, it's
They're
really important to understand,
long-term investment.
are they working? Are you getting a return, right?
Yeah. So there's one thing that I wanted to say
Sure.
that I forgot ties into this. I posted a few times about someone posted about how he was annoyed by someone cold calling him 13 times, and then I
I would
like
be
to
annoyed by that.
yeah
Let me
I
know.
like to mess around, and I was like I commented, well, cold calling's dead. Like I like kind of just and obviously it's not 100% dead. Fine, you can cold
Sure.
call
But it
whatever,
should be.
but I think I'm curious because you're so into the data, would you agree that from a business marketing, B2B business standpoint, whether it's e-commerce or not, it's just not like cold, like just a cold outreach without some sort of marketing touch point? Like I'm a believer in kind of what you're saying, where it's like,
Yeah.
even if it's marketing, you get the LinkedIn ad, then you call them, oh, I saw your LinkedIn ad. Like you're getting these multiple touch points. Like that's where I think
Yeah.
things need to be going, but just straight up calling people and the old way of doing sales, I just don't think the ROI. is there relative to what you could be doing in other ways? And I'm curious what you guys.
Oh, I'm happy to dive in. Well, you go first. I have a lot of things.
I mean, my thought here is just like, in general, what I've learned in working in e-commerce and digital businesses for a long time is just reducing friction is really important, right? So the more information that a customer can find out about your products or your prices or your offering without actually talking to somebody, because again, we all have hectic lives. Maybe we're at 1 a.m, you know what I mean, thinking about buying this thing. We need to actually get some information without talking to somebody synchronously. So asynchronous is good. The more I can find out without friction, the better. And even like we talked about with Snowflake, right? Snowflake is a huge B2B company. I can still go on Snowflake and sign up with a credit card, right? So I think that, of course, if I want to talk to somebody and do a really large multi-million dollar deal with them, I can do that. And certainly someone's going to reach out to me if I sign up with a credit card to try to maybe convert me. But that's a much better and lower friction way of getting customers.
I think where I go with this, and I really do agree with you, but I think where I go with this is that, I like joking about cold calling too, because, I used to do it ages ago. I mean, it just was one of those things. And I just don't think there's a need for it any longer. There are so many tools that the tech is in a better place. We can collect a lot.
You do at least more targeted niche outreach.
Yeah, you can do completely different kinds of outreach that doesn't make you feel like, oh my God, why is this person calling me 13 times? I mean, really, that's the thing you want to avoid at all costs. You don't want to piss people off.
I'd even rather get a cold email, to be honest. At least I can just like easily delete an email, or I can read it quickly and maybe it is relevant. So even in my opinion, even cold email, I think is more relevant and useful, because, you don't want to pick up the phone and randomly, who knows what you waste 20 minutes on the phone, right? Or you hang up. But at least at cold email, it's like, well, probably don't care. But sometimes I have gotten a few where I'm like, this isn't this me, I'll give them a shot. I'll talk to them.
Well, maybe I think part of it is again coming back to data, right? I mean, and you guys were touching on this a second ago, is you could really personalize the outreach to individual customers, because
hey,
on our
I saw
website,
you're the CIO of this industry.
Exactly.
You have these problems.
Or you came to the website and you downloaded a case study on, I don't know, Snowflake for us, right? We want to get to that level of detail to say, well, or you clicked on our retail and e-commerce offerings and things like that, right? And so we can start to think about, okay, this person is interested in XYZ given what they've done on our website and what they've done with our marketing campaign touch points. And so now we can start to say, here's actually a solution for you, which is a lot less like a hard sell and much more like a softer sell, right? Because we're, hey, we're going to solve your problem. And I think that works really well with B2B in general, because, I think the way I think about B2B is if I'm working with another business, I'm helping that business solve their problems, right? And if that's value add, then they'll buy from me. And so I think that, figuring out what the customer is looking for in a very specific way with data and analytics, and then responding to that and making it personalized, I think is really effective.
Most people aren't ready to buy, right? Like not everyone's
That's right.
Snowflake tomorrow. Maybe 100%. Only 5% or 10% or whatever, a certain percentage of the businesses are. So by getting them, that's better. Like trying to just cold call everyone, you're wasting a lot of time on people that are never gonna, or maybe a year away, they're 2 years away from ever buying.
So I want to circle back to data governance, just because it's a favorite area of mine. But
it's one of the most exciting things.
One of the most exciting things we could possibly talk about in the podcast. But for two reasons. I mean, one of the things that I always talk to people about, I end up talking about consumer data privacy. I always end up talking about data security. So where does that come into the conversations that you have with the clients, through Das42?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, and we have actually a blog post on our website about this, but data governance is sort of like this overarching umbrella. And there's like so many different pieces of data governance, like you said, including security, compliance, privacy, including, like we talked about, data cataloging, data quality, all, master data management. There's all these sort of phrases. And a lot of times, if you say, hey, Nick, what do you think about data governance? I'll be like, well, let's talk about first, what do you mean about data governance? Which piece of data governance?
So what do you mean by data
governance?
I mean this sort of holistic sort of, initiative. And some of it, the way that I view it, is very technical. Like there are great tools out there for data quality. So in other words, understanding if, I don't know, your data has changed or you're missing data or some issue with your, and again, that's technical, is some issue with your data. There's the data cataloging aspect, which helps people find what they want to do. But then there's also like this idea of definitional sort of data governance. Like what do you mean when you say revenue? What do you mean when you say sales or orders or customers, right? And that's sort of more process driven, where there's really no silver bullet to this, because you have to get a lot of disparate stakeholders within a business to basically agree, and there are different use cases for different metrics. So but that's what we do with our customers, is create a data dictionary that says, here's what we mean by each of these sort of measures and dimensions. Here's where they come from. So data lineage is another piece of data governance, exactly what happens to data throughout its pipeline and journey. So there's all these different aspects, but I'd say 80% of the work is more organizational and process driven than it is technical. I talk to a lot of engineers that are just like, why can't I fix this with software? And I'm like, you can't, because there's so many people.
You have to decide what it means, right? Like,
that's right.
It sounds simple, but like the way that you classify certain data could be completely different depending on the business, right? And their goals and their views. And so, yeah, I think what you're getting at is it's not just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like it's words that could mean anything. A lot of it, most of it's what, right? Words, right? Like it's not just numbers, right?
That's right. Well, it's business understanding, and that's really, again, where we can come in as business consultants, is helping folks get business meaning out of data. But it's also going to depend on the industry and the type of business that you're in. So if we're working with healthcare clients or financial services clients, they have a lot different sort of regulatory and compliance sort of requirements.
HIPAA compliance. And stuff
than maybe are some of our e-commerce customers, but they're all concerned about privacy and security of their data, and a lot of the security aspects, at least, are taken care of by the cloud providers and software tools that we work with. AWS, Google Cloud, those folks really have great security and sort of other features that allow us to encrypt data and things like that. So we're leveraging a lot of other people's really smart and good work. We help our customers identify data that should be governed or is subject to some sort of compliance, and then help make sure that that there's role-based access control, and folks can really only see the data that's necessary and relevant to them. Like I can't, drill into a specific customer's address and phone number and things like that. Like that, that's not, unless it's very, critical to a business purpose, that's not a good sort of governance practice. So setting up those roles and access controls is really a lot of what we do with our customers, and understanding their compliance and regulatory environment.
Like very underestimated important thing, especially for a larger, like a growing business as they get more. Maybe a 5-person business doesn't need to spend a lot of time on that. But I guess actually, what size do you think that it becomes almost to get critical security? And I use the word security because I feel like it could be an issue if you just have no policies around this stuff, right?
Yeah, it's very true.
What size do you think that becomes an issue?
I mean, I think it's never too early to start thinking about data in general and analytics in general, so including data security and compliance. But, again, like you're saying, for most people, unless you're in like financial services or healthcare or other types of really regulated industries, it's not like it should be top of mind for them. I think
if you're running a pizza shop, you probably don't need to spend too much time right on it.
No, I mean, you should probably, not I don't know, leave your customer names and addresses out on the counter or something like that. But so don't get me wrong, but I think, and that's kind of what I was saying before about getting people off of spreadsheets too, right? Really what happens is when smaller companies that we've worked with, there's a lot of just tribal knowledge. I can speak to the people who are working on different projects and just understand what's going on very easily within a business. As the business grows in complexity and size, then those tribal knowledge type things start to break down.
It doesn't scale.
It doesn't scale. So we see maybe 200-person plus companies start to really get into the mode where they start to need a true data platform and some data strategy. Of course, a lot of customers only call us once they've felt some sort of pain. So like I said,
seeing that hurts. A lot at the 200 plus. So they probably should have done it at 100 people, but at that 200 plus person size, it's like, oh crap, like we're really we should probably do something about it. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I
Like
think
that.
what I would
Yeah.
add
Go ahead.
too is that there's a strategic advantage to data just on its own, and we all learned that
Yeah.
during COVID, right? I mean,
Yep.
because really people who had their data organized particularly well or could access it in all the right ways,
Yeah.
they were quicker to, their ability to pivot was quicker, right? They were able to
Yep.
make decisions more quickly, do something different. And people who didn't really have as good a grasp on their data or access to their data or understanding of their data, it took them more time and more expense
Yep.
or, risked their business in other ways. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's, I feel like, would you agree that companies that are more data savvy are generally also more digitally savvy and more technologically advanced? So it's kind of goes hand in hand.
It
Probably also
does.
maybe better at B2B commerce if they're a B2B company and like, you see where I'm going with this? All this
Yeah,
stuff.
I do. I do. I mean, I'm a little bit biased here, but sort of my thesis after having worked in data and technology for a long time is that all companies basically these days are data and technology companies. They may think that they're doing something else, but they need data and technology to do those things. And it's almost like data and technology are table stakes these days. And a lot of customers that we work with are going through a real profound transformation in their business, whether it's from brick and mortar to direct to consumer or wholesale to retail or whatever it is. They're going through a transformation in their business, and data and technology is really enabling to make those transitions successfully.
So we're running out of time, but I want to ask a few more questions and then we'll wrap up there.
Sure.
I don't know if you're allowed to answer this,
I
but we
can't
saw
wait.
you had some really interesting companies on your website.
Yeah.
One that I thought was interesting is, and I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it, but maybe there's another one that's similar you could talk about, was Kohler
Oh
you
yeah.
had on your website. So what I would, and I don't know much about Kohler's business internally. Obviously, we've seen their products. Most people, I think, have seen their products. They have a lot of what consumer products, but they probably have a big B2B division, right? Like they probably
Very
sell
large. Yeah.
to like Lowe's and Home Depot, I'm guessing. Did you ever get to do you know if they've done much with B2B commerce? Do you know, are
Yeah,
companies
it's a
like
good
that
question.
getting smarter with B2B commerce and not, to me, it seems crazy that people would have to call them up to order like 10 sinks, or let's say a retailer wants to order 10, 100 units or
At
whatever.
least he didn't do dialing like on Rotary.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hello.
And
Like
I'm sure people do call in, but I'm saying like you would think that they would be investing in a kind of a portal.
100%. Yeah. I mean, they had. I mean, they have a quite large B2B business across lots of different things. So not just plumbing fixtures, but they also sell generators and other things like
Yeah.
that that are used for
Huge.
industrial
Yeah.
applications. But the funny thing about Kohler, was they have very very many websites that they have, right? So and they have different brands. So they have, I can't remember all the brands that they have, but they have different brands. Some are luxury type brands, some are sort of
Yeah.
more mid-market type brands,
And they all
and
have
all
a
these brands.
website, right?
Yeah, they all these. So literally, we were working across, I think, hundreds of websites that they
Wow.
have to get a holistic picture of what their customers were doing. And at the time, at least, they weren't working on B2B e-commerce, but it was, somebody would come to the website, look at different products, and sort of indicate their interest, and then it would be then they would connect to a salesperson and sort of have that in the funnel. But what we wanted to see was, what products were folks interested in, or what brands were doing well versus other brands, and how were they converting, and how were they getting to the website. So it was a very, again, kind of very similar to what we started off talking about, which is kind of almost from a B2C standpoint, which is the same things that we would do for a B2C website, we do for a B2B website. Again, it's slightly different, but at the end of the day, a lot of the concerns and challenges are the same.
And do you think that they should have, and I don't. Do you think they should have invested in making it easier to just buy as a business, or?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, and I can't speak. I don't know all the details about the business,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
course,
yeah. I
right?
don't
So
want to get you in
yeah,
trouble with
yeah, right,
the
exactly.
corporate guys over there.
No, but I think you're right. I mean, a lot of their business is still wholesale, so or to trade, for example, to builders and contractors. So,
Sure.
to your point, it seems like if you're only ordering 10 sinks, maybe if you're a contractor, that should be easier. But I think, for a generator, I mean, that's a pretty complex product, and there's maybe some customer education that needs to happen. I don't know if you should be able to
Less likely
line
that
that.
will be e-commerce, but something like a
Right.
smaller, refrigerator, I think could be e-commerce. It's shipping is complex, but
yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I think that on the back end, right, you need to have sort of the business processes and operations to actually sort of fulfill those orders and things like that, or and that depends, of course, on every business individually. But in their cases, they're doing a lot of wholesale business and things like that, so they're
yeah.
doing very large orders and things like that.
So in your data experience, which is a lot, what company have you seen that do you think is doing the best? Let's say besides Amazon, because I think Amazon's like the obvious answer for B2B e-commerce. Doing
Yeah.
besides like Amazon and maybe another top marketplace, like a more traditional B2B company. Is there anyone?
Yeah, I mean, Apple does it pretty well because I think we have an Apple
Yeah.
store that we log in and buy
We do too.
laptops and equipment for our folks. Yeah, but we still had to talk to somebody to get that set up, and we still have access to our own kind of corporate discounts and central billing and stuff like that. So they're doing it pretty well. But I think in that example though,
That's a great example though, because people don't think about that. But we buy a lot of Apple laptops. It's probably one of our larger,
us too.
hardware expenses. And it's pretty automated. Like we at this point, to be honest, we rarely talk to them. We mostly just go on the wholesale, but it's very custom. They set it up. They set us up for,
And you could set up packages, like a laptop, a mouse, keyboard package, or whatever it is. You can you could put in your own purchase orders if you need to have kind of your own procurement process or whatever you need to do that has flexibility for that. If you have credit with them, you can have terms on your POs and things like that. But so I think that again, it's very specific to the business. But they're doing it well. We also buy a lot of stuff on Amazon Business, but I think the Amazon Business side of the thing of the house is a little bit just. It just feels to me like the e-commerce on the business side, and it just allows us to have some of the nice features like central billing or user access or approvals and things like that. So those are certainly business focused features. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think those are really good examples that, off the top of my head. I'm sure there are many other niche players out there that I'm just maybe not familiar with, but I think.
But I think Apple is a great example that a lot of, especially manufacturers, could learn from.
Yeah.
Just they're doing a good job of automating because they're smart. They don't want us to have to call and talk to if every single business had to call in an order. I'm sure it would be like an insane amount of customer service they'd have to staff. Plus, it'd be annoying too, right? Sometimes we want to order a laptop like after work or maybe I don't know.
Yep. So. Well, I think that's the point, right? I mean, the point is you want the convenience, you want low friction to actually interacting and buying with the business. And I think it also, just like as you mentioned, opens up to a different market because it's not like you're some huge business placing a multi-million-dollar order over the phone, which you still may do over the phone.
Generally, 1 or 2 laptops at a time. It's not like you hire 100 people in a day.
Right, and that's kind of my point. The minimums are lower.
That I think you've come back to a number of times, and we often come back to in the podcast is the low friction part.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's something that B2C has worked on for a very long time, and B2B has been working on, for a shorter period of time. I think it's fair to say, and that's really where the opportunity still is. Just lowering the friction, figuring out every single thing that they can do to get there. Data is a huge piece of this, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a lesson, for folks.
It's a huge opportunity. I think that's the thing is because there is so much friction in B2B. Like you have to call Kohler and go through the sales rep, and if you can make that process easier, that's a huge competitive advantage, I think.
I completely agree. So I'm going to ask you my usual question I've asked in many podcasts. Give me like a 3 to 5 year window. Just tell me like how things are going to be for your space, the things that you do, the types of clients you work with. What do you think is coming up in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and something obviously that I spent a lot of time thinking about. And I'm not going to claim that I have all the answers here, but from my perspective, I think looking back on what we were doing at Etsy, for example, with Hadoop, and that was kind of the early stages of big data. And you remember big data? That was a buzzword. It was a trend.
Yeah,
right?
People don't use that.
That's right.
No one says it. No one says it.
That's right, because what's basically happening is that people realize that all data these days is pretty big, so it's just data. It's almost
there's lots of data.
Yeah, but I think the point though is like we're still in the very sort of middle adoption phase of these kind of technologies like Snowflake, like business intelligence software and things like that. So I think we still have another 3 to 5 years where large enterprises and mid-market folks are moving off of, sort of legacy systems and onto the cloud and these modern types of software and data platforms, we're still in the very early stages of machine learning and sort of predictive analytics. I think that's where, I see a lot of growth, let's say 3+ years, at least for our business and in the analytics industry in general. I mean, really, it's kind of like a crawl, walk, run situation where first thing, you got to get your data in one place, you got to get it standardized and help everyone use it. And then later on, a lot of our customers that are more mature with their analytics and data practices, they're asking us, what else can we do with our data, right? Now we got it in Snowflake, we got it all standardized and centralized. Great, what else can we do? So one of the things that we're starting to see in the near term is more like data applications. So in other words, line of business applications. If you're a customer service person, you can look at data and analytics, but now you can act on it. And that's sort of the middle step between that and sort of more predictive analytics and machine learning, which I think is a little bit further out, but is a really exciting and growing area of our business.
So I'm going to ask you one last question because I think it's just kind of a funny question. Elon Musk warns about AI being a danger to society. Like you're kind of alluding to that, and it makes sense because the more data we have, the more it makes sense to use machine learning and AI. So you have all this data and you can automate things. Do you agree that is something we should be worried about, or?
Well, Elon Musk is a much smarter and richer person than I am, so it's hard for me to disagree with that. But at the same time, I mean, I think I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think he's probably thinking like 100 years into the future, and I'm thinking about like, how do you optimize your AdWords and marketing campaigns without human intervention? So, thinking about that smaller of a scale, that's really where, understanding where we can get business value out of machine learning, that's kind of more what I'm focused on. But, it is very interesting to think about one day, the robots and AI taking over and that kind of thing. But, in the meantime, I'll still be in the trenches.
Time. So your answer is we got time. Hopefully we'll figure it out. Hopefully we'll figure it out before it becomes too late.
Actually,
right?
the thing that's sort of funny, not funny, that I've heard the most is that people are worried about like their smart appliances going crazy, like their refrigerator,
coming to attack them,
which I think is hilarious. But it's also like, well, I kind of get that. Somebody will hack into my toaster. And,
there's a Netflix little weird series that has stuff on that. It was this little cartoonish series that I found.
I believe it. Or drones, like delivery drones attacking me or something.
Right? Well, it's kind of like a Black Mirror type thing. I don't know if you've seen that showing up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope that doesn't come to pass, and I don't think you'll have any part of that. You will not.
We'll defeat the attack of the refrigerators.
That's right. I'll do what I can in the appliance war.
Well, I want to give you a big thank you. This is great. You've done something special for us. I can't believe it's our first time again together in the same room. It's great honored to have you here with us as our guest, and I think our listeners and viewers are going to be very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, guys. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks so much for having me. And glad to see you guys, and to be honored as your first guest on the in-person podcast here. So thanks, guys.
Sure. It's a pleasure.